Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the 100 Landscape Challenge. And I've got even more landscapes for you today and different styles. And the first one we're doing is in this square sketchbook, and I used tape around it. And people often ask me what that sketchbook is, but I hate this sketchbook. I really dislike the paper. I think it's by the brand Kunst und Papier, which is a German brand, I guess. But I don't like the paper. I'm just trying to fill it using gouache and media that's more forgiving. So it's not good for watercolor, even though they sell it as a watercolor sketchbook. That's the reason why I don't recommend this sketchbook, but I'm trying to fill it anyways. And I was initially drawn to this square format. And I'm using all kinds of gouache. I had different brands on that palette. I think it must have been a mix of Arteza and Winsor & Newton and maybe a little bit of Holbein gouache. And I will link all of those brands in the description box below. So in case you wanna get something and if you wanna use my link, I get a small commission, so you're supporting my channel. If you wanna buy anything off Amazon, if you use my link first and then buy it, then I think I get a small commission even if you buy something else. So if you wanna support the channel, that's a good way to do it. And in this piece, you can see that I'm doing a very layered style. So I always call it very stylized, a stylized style. Yeah, I'm so eloquent. I never really know what to call this style, but I call it a layered style. Just because we have those flat layers, and I love to do this every once in a while. You have to do multiple layers depending on the gouache you use, but I found that with most gouache brands, you have to do multiple layers if you want to have a completely flat layer. I don't think that I've tried any gouache brand that does not require at least 2 layers for a style like this, to be honest. Not even Holbein. Maybe acrylic gouache. Acrylic gouache is much more opaque as far as I could tell, and I mean, I water my gouache down pretty much. That might be another reason why I have to do multiple layers, because I want to reuse the gouache that's in my palette and I don't want it to go to waste. So I'd rather do 2 layers than throw away all the gouache that I have on my palette. So here you can see that I'm now using posca pens, and I'm adding some lines and some details to this because I thought that this would be really fun to combine these flat shapes with some posca pens. And yeah, I did those doodles and they worked okay on gouache. It's honestly hard to find pens that work good on gouache because gouache can be a little bit chalky and it's hard to draw over it. So if you were to use regular markers, you would probably have a harder time painting over gouache. But with Posca pens, it worked okay. It's not the best, but it did work. And then I thought that it was lacking some flowers and I added those, and at that point I still liked the piece, but then later on I added in more and I think that I kind of ruined it, but people seem to have liked it, so maybe that's just my opinion. Here I'm adding a sun with some lines around it. I was trying to get everything to be in this sort of style, kind of very illustrative and playful and lots of doodles. And at that point I still really liked the piece and I was like, oh my god, I'm creating such a good piece. But here is where it all went downhill. I started to add those pink flowers. The posca, yeah, it was okay. Here it's now, that's where I messed up in my opinion. I really don't like what I did here with the black. Why did I use black? Then I went back and forth trying to fix this and adding in more and more stuff with the posca pens, and if I could go back and rewind, I'd probably undo all of that, but I just kept going because at this point I was so deep into it and I just had to keep going. And yeah, it's not that big of a deal, but it's not my favorite piece. It might also be because it's in this sketchbook that's not my favorite, and I might end up doing some collaging or mindless things in this sketchbook, or do some mixed media experimentation and use it more as that kind of sketchbook versus more finished pieces. Here you can see the end result of our first drawing painting of this video, and then I was using Clairefontaine watercolor paper and some different watercolors, Daniel Smith and White Nights. White Nights, they sent me those pastel colors, and while I really love the pastel tones and you get such a nice even flat layer with them if you want to, they perform very similar to gouache. I think that you should probably not combine them with other watercolors. I was having such a hard time because once you have the pastel watercolors mixed in with your other watercolors, the other watercolors, they become dull and get kind of chalky, and it just mixes in a lot and it's hard to get back your contrast. I don't know how else to explain it, but I love the colors that I got in this spread so much, and I love working on this kind of paper and using more high-end paper lately. I feel like I'm slowly getting over the whole sketchbook thing, which is sad because I love sketchbooks and I love creating sketchbook ideas, videos, and filming them, but I don't know. I'm slowly more moving into the more finished pieces thing, but then I don't know what to do with all of the pieces. I mean, I have some on my online shop. In case you're interested, that's linked in the description box. But people rarely buy original paintings, to be honest, for me, because I don't promote it enough, I think, and it's just not my main focus of my art and my channel. So I rarely ever sell those, and then they're lying around ready to be shipped. So in case you want to buy something, head on over to my shop. But it's just I don't know, and I don't know what to do with all the pieces. I have a lot of them on my walls, so I might create my own sketchbook at some point. Just use my favorite paper and make a sketchbook out of that, and maybe a slightly bigger sketchbook than the ones I've used to filling. And then I could probably fill more sketchbooks, and I think that would solve my problem with all of the things that I've mentioned. And with these 3 landscapes, I don't know if they count as landscapes because there's not a lot of landscape on it, but I make them count because it's hard enough to get to 100 landscapes, so I let those count as well. And like I said, I'm so happy with the color combo. It's just so bright and cheerful and reminds me of spring, and it just makes me happy to look at, even though the pieces are not that sophisticated, but it's just such fun colors. And then with the next one, I was experimenting a little bit. Marabu sent me those alcohol inks and some markers to test, and it came with a lot of instructions, but many of you won't probably be surprised when I tell you that I didn't completely read through the instructions, and this is probably why this happened. And this happened over and over again with every single one of them when I opened them. I don't know if there's a better way to open them, but I could not get them to open unless I used a needle, so I did that. And every time I opened one, the paint or the ink splattered all over my hand, and I was so glad that I was using this protective mat and not working on the desktop directly. But this was so much fun, y'all. I had so much fun with this. And I was just using those tiny little test sheets. I have bigger sheets as well that I'm gonna use in the future. And I still have so much ink left after all of this. I barely made a dent in those bottles. So I'm really looking forward to doing more of these and experimenting more. And what you basically do is you're like pouring the ink, but this is alcohol ink, so it behaves differently than water-based ink would. And it creates those fun shapes and it's just so much fun, and there's different techniques with it. You can also use a hair dryer, and I tried that, but it didn't really work that much and was a huge mess. So I stopped with that and just continued dropping on the paper, and this is so much fun. And I don't know if y'all are wondering how this is gonna become a landscape. You will see. Here are they when they dried. Then I used these markers that they also sent me. Apparently those are a little bit like Sharpies. I don't know a lot about Sharpies. We don't have them here, and I think I have a few Sharpies that I bought in the US, but I'm not a huge fan of them and didn't really use them a lot. I know that's such a shock to a lot of you probably, but I'm not really used to Sharpies, and someone in a video said that those markers remind them of Sharpies, so maybe they're similar. And they didn't work too well on top of all of this, I have to say. They worked, but they could have worked a little bit better. They could have been a little bit juicier, because when you go over where you've already drawn, then you kind of scratch off what you've already done. I don't know if that just happens on the little swatchy papers that I got, or if it also happens on the bigger sheet. Maybe those markers are better used for something else. I'm yet to find out how to use them better. Maybe on marker paper like I would use Copics. We will see how I'm gonna use these, and if I don't find a use for them, I'm probably gonna donate them. A lot of the art supplies that I get, I test them once or twice in a video, and if I don't like them, then I will donate them, just because I don't want them lying around and not getting used. And people are so happy when they get them, and so I do that. And yeah, I feel much better than when I'm not hoarding all of this. I already have so many art supplies, and brands want me to try them and want to see what I think about it and want me to show them in the videos. And so I also love to try them, and I also love to experiment, even though lately I've been turning down a lot of the PR sample requests because I can't keep up anymore, and they all want me to do a video, and at one point I'm not willing to offer them any more free promotion unless I really want to try the product and it's a win-win. So that's where I'm at with the PR samples. And here you can see that I'm now creating this underwater scene, and I love how those turned out. It's so much fun. What I gotta say though is that the inks smell a lot. They have an intense smell, so you need proper ventilation if you do this. Here's what it looked like in a different light. I'm so happy with how these two turned out, and I still got the other ones left that I can paint on. I really hope that you enjoyed all the ideas in this video. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.